Let me tell you something. There's nothing like sipping your morning coffee, watching the sun creep over the water, when suddenly 3 squad cars swing into your driveway like you're hosting a secret mafia meeting. That was me, still in my pajama pants, coffee halfway to my lips, blinking at a parade of flashing lights and the unmistakable click of heels on gravel. See, that's how Karen Whitfield, our lovely HOA president, likes to introduce herself, by dialing 911 and then making her entrance like she's the star of some suburban reality show. All because I had the audacity to actually own the old mill lake I just bought, fair and square. Now, the mix of burnt coffee and exhaust hanging in the air should have been a clue this wasn't going to be an ordinary Tuesday. Karen strutted out of her BMW like she was about to deliver a royal decree, her heels chewing up my driveway gravel. For 6 years, she'd ruled Willowbrook Heights like her own little fiefdom, terrorizing anyone who didn't bow to her vision of community values. And let me tell you, I was about to watch her entire empire implode in real time. Thing is, Karen thought she had everyone fooled, skimming off lake maintenance fees, filing bogus police reports, bullying anyone who didn't fall in line. But I'm an electrician. I know how to trace things back to their source, and buddy, I was about to flip the breaker on her whole operation. But before I get ahead of myself, let me ask you, what would you do if your HOA tried to steal your land? Ever face down a neighbor like Karen? Drop your stories and your location in the comments below. Now, let me back up a sec and tell you how all this started. 6 months ago, I was Marcus Delvicio, 52 years old, licensed electrician. Recently divorced, living in a shoebox studio that reeked of someone else's microwaved fish. Then Uncle Tony died and left me $180,000. Just like that, I had a shot at starting over. That's when I found the Hartwell Mill property, 3 acres, private lake, a cabin that smelled like old sawdust and memories, and 50 feet of shoreline where you could actually hear yourself think. For $165,000, it was mine. Of course, what I didn't know was that I'd just bought a front row seat to the Karen Whitfield show. Turns out, for 15 years, the Willowbrook Heights HOA had treated my lake like their private country club, 47 homes, $890 a month in fees, and an unshakable belief that lake access was their birthright. The sound of kids splashing and barbecue smoke drifting across the water might have been cute if they weren't all trespassing on my property. Enter Karen. Picture a woman who'd make Mussolini seem charming. At 48, she'd run unopposed for years, mostly because no one else wanted to deal with her drama. Her husband Brad drove a BMW that showed up in more family photos than their actual kids, and their $750,000 house had the kind of lake view that apparently made them think they owned the entire shoreline. Week 2, her voice came shrieking across the water. We need to discuss your responsibilities to the community. She marched over with 3 board members trailing like nervous ducklings and presented me with a homemade contract that would have impressed the IRS. According to Karen, I was responsible for maintaining their boat ramp, stocking fish, dock upkeep, and, my personal favorite, providing insurance for anyone who wanted to jump in the lake. I just stared at her. Ma'am, I own this property. Check the deed. Her smile could have frozen lava. We'll see about that. Now, maybe I should have walked away, but I tried to be reasonable. Let me get settled. Maybe we can work something out. She heard negotiation and smelled blood. Next morning, my dock looked like a frat party had gone through a diaper phase. Beer cans, cigarette butts, and yep, a used diaper floating by my boat lift. So I put up a few basic security cameras. Nothing fancy, just enough to catch who was treating my place like a public dump. Within hours, Karen was at my doorstep, screaming about surveillance harassment and hostile environments. I told her if the kids didn't want to be filmed, maybe they should stay off my dock. Her face went through more colors. Then a sunset. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a neighbor. I was up against someone who truly believed 15 years of trespassing made my land her kingdom. But Karen had picked the wrong guy to mess with. She unleashed code enforcement hell, 14 violations in 1 week. Unpermitted dock repair. I'd hammered 3 boards. Illegal signage. My security sign was apparently too scary. Noise violation. My generator at 8:02 p.m. became a neighborhood crisis. But something was off. County code enforcement doesn't move this fast. Then my cameras caught Karen and Rick Donovan, the code supervisor, getting cozy at Starbucks. My uncle always said, when government moves fast, it's either love or money. Turns out, Karen and Rick were dating. 8 months, in fact. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and for $47, I got gold, 17 emails about how to expedite the Delvicio situation. Pillow talk turned to code enforcement, you know what I mean? While Rick was playing hall monitor, I hired a surveyor. Every inch was staked out. Her precious community dock was 8 feet onto my property. Here's the kicker. In this state, you need 20 years of uninterrupted use for adverse possession. Karen's crew only had 15. The orange stakes went up, and you'd have thought I'd announced the end of the world. That night, Karen called an emergency HOA meeting. My neighbor Frank, retired sheriff, eyes everywhere, filled me in. This newcomer is destroying our community values, she shrieked, pacing like a caged tiger. Even her board started looking uneasy. But Karen wasn't done. A few days later, Deputy Mike Whitfield, Karen's brother-in-law, showed up. We've had complaints you're harassing residents, he said. Thumbs hooked in his belt like some low-rent Wyatt Earp. The cameras make folks nervous. Maybe they should stay off my dock, I said. He didn't like that. Karen had gone from petty to criminal, using family and law enforcement to intimidate me. But see, I'd learned, document everything. Every citation, every visit, every wellness check. When you fight a system this corrupt, you need a paper trail. It escalated. 3:17 a.m., police lights outside my cabin. Karen claimed there was a break-in at my mill. Deputies arrived, guns drawn. This is the third call this week. One muttered, embarrassed. Over 2 weeks, Karen reported me for running an illegal business, endangering children, stockpiling weapons. Heck, ordering Chinese takeout became possible terrorist activity. But here's where it gets good. Frank, the retired cop, sat me down on my dock and laid it out. She's trying to break you, he said, make you give up. Then he handed me something that made my jaw drop, a printout of Karen's false police reports. 47 in 3 years. She'd targeted a landscaper for parking wrong, a widow for bird feeders, a military couple for a motorcycle. The department knew, but nobody stuck around long enough to build a case. She picks on the poor, minorities, the working class, Frank said. This isn't just about the lake. She's running people out. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a feud. This was a campaign of harassment disguised as neighborhood watch. So I started recording every interaction, legal in my state, one-party consent. The next time Deputy Mike showed up, I let him know I was recording. He turned pale. Frank filed an internal affairs complaint. By Monday, Mike was being questioned, and Karen's little network of intimidation was cracking. But Karen wasn't done. Her husband Brad, a personal injury lawyer, sent me a cease and desist, threatening a $50,000 lawsuit for emotional distress and lost property values. The irony, he'd helped write the original HOA documents, which I dug up and found stated the mill owner, me, had exclusive lake rights. Brad had literally written the rulebook that undid them. With my evidence, I hired Rebecca Rowan, a lawyer with a nose for blood in the water. She found the HOA's liability insurance was void for anything on my property. Every barbecue, every party, no coverage. One accident, and the HOA would be bankrupt. Meanwhile, neighbors started whispering their own Karen stories. Disabled kids harassed, veterans targeted, elderly couples threatened. The pattern was clear. Karen bullied anyone who couldn't fight back. But this time, she'd picked the wrong guy. Rebecca suggested one last negotiation. I agreed, but secretly recorded the meeting. Frank came along for the show. Karen strutted in, expecting me to surrender. Instead, I laid out the original HOA documents, the medical records proving the previous owner couldn't legally sign, agreements, and the full tally of stolen fees. Her face went white as a sheet. I gave them 2 options, come clean and negotiate, or I'd call the Attorney General and press fraud charges. Karen stormed out, swearing vengeance. That's when things got wild. Sabotaged dock chains, spray-painted signs, survey stakes ripped out and tossed in the lake. Karen started recruiting local teens to vandalize my property, paying them $50 a pop. But one of them, Tyler, came clean, confessed on a recording that Karen was behind it all. My neighborhood blog, Truth About Willowbrook HOA. started blowing up. Local TV got involved. Karen went on Facebook, playing the victim, claiming I was the threat. Meanwhile, her insurance company launched their own investigation. Board members jumped ship. Karen, running out of options, tried to bribe my contractor friend Joe Martinez to sabotage my dock. He refused and gave us a statement. Karen's last play? She filed for a restraining order, claiming I'd threatened her. Problem is, I had medical records showing I was across town during the supposed incident. Court day arrived. Karen cried on the stand. But Rebecca shredded her case with video, receipts, and testimony. The judge not only threw out her order, but ordered an investigation into her use of HOA funds. Karen melted down on the courthouse steps. TV cameras caught it all. Hashtag HOA Karen trended online. That night, the board voted for a special election. The vote: 41 to remove her, 2 to keep her. She was done. Karen's arrest for assaulting me on election day sealed the deal. The new board issued a formal apology. The neighborhood changed overnight. Barbecues returned. Lake access agreements made sense. Property values went up. Karen was forced to sell her house. Her husband filed for divorce. The HOA refunded fees. My security business exploded. Kids learned about lake ecology at our new festival, funded by a federal grant. Ironically, thanks to Karen's bogus environmental complaints. Frank's Neighborhood Watch became a model for other communities. Rebecca's legal work inspired a property rights scholarship. And me? I finally felt at home. So that's my story, about how one bully thought she owned a lake and lost everything to a guy with a stubborn streak and a box of documents. If you've ever tangled with an HOA tyrant, drop your story below. I read every one, and maybe your battle will be next. And hey, if you want more tales of underdogs taking on the powers that be, hit subscribe, because justice, sometimes, is the best neighbor you'll ever have. Now, let me ask you, when is it right to stand your ground, and when do you let things slide for peace? Drop your thoughts below. Let's hear where you stand.